Her digestion was so much better. Her acne was basically non-existent. Her periods were better. Her mood was better. Her sleep was better. So this was another example of it wasn't just perimenopause. It was these deeper layers of gut health, mineral health, a lot of other things that we talked about. But for the sake of this example, even the last two things made I would say those were the biggest impacts with her. Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync. Today we're going to be talking about my 4 non-negotiables when stopping birth control. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend listening to last week's episode where I talk about the number one mistake women make when, considering lab testing before stopping or after stopping birth control, because we're going to play off of that and talk about essentially what to do instead. So I prefaced this last week, but really last week I talked about why I don't start with hormone testing, which is really surprising for a lot of women that come and inquire to work with me or interested in working with me. And I tell them how my approach is different in that respect because I've seen through my own personal hormone healing journey and clinical experience that testing hormones is one of the biggest mistakes you can make right off the bat because it leads to more questions than it does answers. And a lot of times it just gives you surface level answers at best and can be more confusing. And you're really left just being like, okay, I guess I need to fix my testosterone, but why is my testosterone high? Or why is my estrogen low or progesterone low or estrogen high or detox issues with estrogen? So again, it's something that I find a lot of functional practitioners and conventional doctors will run to is, oh, you're experiencing acne, painful periods, missing periods, let's test your hormones. But that's not going to give the whole answer. And at the same time, it's also sometimes going to show that your hormones are normal based on lab values, but there's still deeper imbalances that are presenting symptoms. So today we're going to talk about what I found to be, really more effective and giving my clients better, faster, more reliable results. And the exact blueprint of what to look for instead. So we're going to talk about body systems to look into that are the building blocks for healthy balanced hormones, as well as specific lab tests that you can do to get insight into how healthy are those systems or where are the imbalances in those systems. So you have a really clear plan of what you need to tackle versus blindly supplementing, blindly guessing, following another elimination diet, or feeling stuck with your only option being, well, just go back on birth control or you're stuck on birth control. So the first system I want to talk about is minerals and stress. And as most of you know, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, birth control depletes a variety of vitamins and minerals. And if you're new to this, specifically birth control depletes vitamins A, B, C, and E. Vitamins A, C, and E being really powerful antioxidants, and minerals, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. And they all impact hormones, your thyroid, your skin, and your mood differently. So for example, zinc and B vitamins are really, really important for mood. If you have low levels of zinc, that can lead to anxiety, irritability, depression, mood swings. It can also lead to high levels of copper because copper and zinc balance each other out. So this is something I see a lot in my practice of really low levels of zinc and really high levels of copper or really low levels of copper. Magnesium, it's really important for blood sugar regulation. So going back to mood and energy, if your magnesium is low, this can directly impact your mood, and it can also indirectly impact your mood because it can impact blood sugar. So that can make it more likely that you're having blood sugar spikes and dips, which can cause irritability, mood swings, anxiety, etc. Of course, we want to look beyond this too and make for sure that you're eating enough, you're eating on a regular basis for blood sugar management. And this has been a powerful mineral that has so many functions in the body. In addition to blood sugar, it helps with sleep and energy. And it can also help indirectly with digestion. So there's different forms of magnesium. And, depending on what form, it could be calming. It could be helpful for if you're constipated, softening bowels, making bowel movements easier, or it could help with energy levels overall, or a combination of all those things. Vitamin A is really important for skin health. It's so important for especially those with acne and even proactive aging to get enough vitamin A. And we're talking retinol, which is the animal source. So my favorite supplement for this is cod liver oil. Also, beef liver has some of that in there. But vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin E actually all are really important for my clients with acne. So all of these minerals play a really important part. And vitamins and minerals are like spark plugs in the body. So digestion, metabolism, your skin, your pretty much every single system, your brain functioning, all of those things rely on minerals. So this is the number one test that I recommend running, which is the HTMA, the hair tissue mineral analysis, because it gives you a really good holistic picture of your mineral status. And it can give you, it doesn't directly test vitamins. So this is something we'll talk about with the functional blood labs. That more so tests vitamins like vitamin A. But the mineral test, the hair tissue mineral analysis, is great at showing patterns with minerals, which can give us indication if we're just doing that test alone, like with my birth control reset, what vitamins and minerals, or I'm sorry, what vitamins you might need based on your mineral patterns. So, for example, if you have really high iron on the HTMA, I would recommend getting a full iron panel to compare because that's one of those nuanced ones that it requires both of those labs for me to see the full picture here. And if anything, it shows me that you probably need more vitamin A and vitamin C because those things help with our built-in iron recycling picture. The cool thing about the HTMA too is that it shows 3 months worth of data versus blood labs show just that moment in time for your mineral status. So when I'm looking at minerals, I think the HTMA is far superior. Blood work is great for other things, which we'll get to. But for minerals in particular, the HTMA is so helpful because it gives you a 3-month time period versus just that moment in time, which can be very variable depending on if you fasted, what you had to eat the night before, your stress, lots of things. And 99% of some minerals reside inside the cell. So specifically potassium and magnesium, which the HTMA shows you what's happening inside the cell versus blood labs just show you what's happening outside the cell. So it's just not as good of a picture. And one final thing that I really love about the HTMA as well is that it can show your stress response and your stress resiliency to a cellular level. So, I think of it as like if you're just looking at a sample, like with your eyes, that's blood labs. But if you're looking through a microscope down to the cellular level, that's how deep the HTMA goes. So it shows you, are you in fight or flight all the time? Are your adrenals hyper aroused or are they sluggish from prolonged periods of stress? How's your cellular stress resiliency? Super important. And from that data, we can target specific minerals to help build up your stress resiliency. So it's not just a matter of stress less. That's one of the most frustrating things you can hear when your body is stressed, you're tired, you're not feeling great, and when life is just lifing. And of course, that's really important and something that I work on with my women. And at the same time, there's a lot we can do from a nutrition standpoint with mineral therapy alone to improve your resiliency to stress. So when that stress happens, when life be lifing, you have more of a tolerance for that and you can manage that better just from restoring and rebalancing your minerals, which is pretty amazing. So that's number one is minerals and stress and using the hair tissue mineral analysis, HTMA, to uncover those deeper patterns and imbalances to get a really holistic viewpoint of what's going on there. So that I would say is literally the number one. If you're looking to stop birth control or you've already stopped and you're experiencing symptoms, I would start with minerals because I've had women who just test and balance their minerals and restore their minerals alone, and they've seen dramatic improvements in their skin, in their digestion, in their mood. It's pretty incredible. Number two is gut health. So this is one that is getting a lot of attention within the past couple of years, which is great. Your gut is tied to not only your hormones, but it's also tied to your skin, your digestion, of course, and your mood. So there's a direct link between your gut health and your mood. And I just want to call this out too because, there's a lot of talk and a lot of buzz around the GLP-1s, and there are actually certain bacteria strains, good bacteria strains that trigger that hormone, that GLP-1 hormone or PYP hormone in the gut. So it's pretty cool when you work on optimizing your gut bacteria. That will help with hunger fullness cues. So, I have a client right now who she is on a GLP-1, and one of her goals is to come off of that. And we've done a lot of deeper work. She had some history of disordered eating that we're working through and has been improving greatly. She's made tremendous strides with her minerals, her foundations. She started seeing a therapist for some unresolved trauma, and she had really low Fecalum prunitzii, which is a bacteria that, if low, can impact hunger fullness cues. So for her, that's something that we're targeting so she can more confidently come off of the GLP-1, as well as working on her relationship with food, and that, breaking down that restrictive mentality around food. That's super, super important for weight management and just healthy relationship with food in general. So I digress. That was a little bit of a tangent. That was not in my notes, but I was just thinking about that. And I think that's important because I'm sure a lot of you listening maybe are considering that, or maybe you know someone who's on it. And there's so much we can do with your metabolism through minerals, through your gut health, and through your relationship with food and properly fueling your metabolism versus restricting it. And with birth control specifically, it really impacts your gut. So knowing the direct link of your gut to your hormones, your skin, your mood, all of that stuff, birth control encourages the growth of bad bacteria. It also discourages the growth of good bacteria. So because of that, we can see overgrowth in bad bacteria, parasites, candida, and we can also see high beta glucuronidase, which is an enzyme made by certain gut bacteria, and its job is to basically unlock substances that the liver has already packaged up for elimination, aka detoxification in the gut. One of the things the liver packages up is excess estrogen. So when beta glucuronidase levels are too high, it can actually undo that packaging. So think of it as like a present. You wrap the present, you put a pretty little bow on it, that's ready to be detoxed. But if glucuronidase levels are too high, it rips the paper up, it throws the bow away, and then that estrogen gets recirculated back instead of getting excreted. So essentially, estrogen is now able to be excreted in the proper amounts in the bowels. And that's where we can, this can contribute to high estrogen symptoms like PMS, heavy periods, breast tenderness, mood swings, bloating, or cyclical acne during ovulation or during your period. So basically anything tied to estrogen dominance. So one of the things I look at, and that hormone testing doesn't tell us, especially if you're doing it in the blood, the Dutch test gives us a little bit more insight into it, but not 100%. But hormone testing doesn't tell us, why is your estrogen too high, or why are you having trouble detoxifying estrogen? So this is where these levels, these underlying layers of hormone balance, like looking at the gut health, looking at beta glucuronidase levels, looking at detoxification pathways as a whole, is going to give you such better results and such a better roadmap to know what you need to target. So you know exactly why your estrogen levels are high. Is it because you're making too much? Or is it because it's low compared to progesterone? Or is it because you can't detoxify it because, especially after being on birth control for several years, your gut's impacted and your liver's impacted, your main detox organs? So that's a major part of hormone balance, especially when you've been on birth control. I use the GI map to reveal what's going on in the gut. So this is a comprehensive stool analysis, and this is going to show you levels of good bacteria, levels of bad bacteria, if there's any parasites or candida. It's also going to show if there's H. pylori, which H. pylori is tied to 100% acne. It can also be tied to thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's, as well as low stomach acid, which has downstream effects. If you have low stomach acid, you can't properly digest and absorb the nutrition from your food. And so if we go back to step number 1 with minerals, if you're consuming, we did your mineral test and we're consuming vitamins and minerals through supplements, through foods, but you have low stomach acid and you can't properly digest and absorb the nutrition from that food, we're still not going to be moving the needle. So this is where it's really, really important to look at all of these things in combination. Backing up a little bit, the HTMA can show me insights into whether or not you have low stomach acid by itself. So low cobalt, low or high cobalt, low potassium, low sodium, those are all indicators of low stomach acid. So I get a pretty good idea from the HTMA by itself. And I like to use the GI map in combination with it to really show, again, why the deeper layers of this and to confirm that. This also shows not only digestion of protein, vitamins, and minerals, but also fat. So if someone has high steatocrit, it's showing that their body isn't digesting fat properly. And that can lead to fatty, loose stools. It can lead to a lot of bloating, digestive issues, which again translates into these other hormone imbalances and hormone symptoms. So it's not just a matter of, do I have a parasite? That's a big thing people are really interested in now. But it's also looking at, do I have enough good bacteria to balance out the bad? Do I have, how is my digestion? How's the immune system of my gut? Is there inflammation going on? Those are all really, really important things to be asking. And all of those things are what the GI map shows. So, this is an example. I'm thinking of a client who she was, and I might have shared this story before, but I want to share it here because I think it's really, really important and really relevant to what we're talking about. But she was told, she's in her late 30s, and she was experiencing a whole host of symptoms. So over the past couple of years, she'd been gaining weight despite not changing her eating or exercise habits. She was a really balanced eater. She exercised, got her steps in every single day. She was also experiencing a lot of digestive issues. She was dealing with bloating, smelly gas, constipation/diarrhea, depending on the day. And it was really impacting her life. And she felt uncomfortable in her clothes, and she felt like she had to cancel, and she did cancel plans because she was so uncomfortable and was scared of having to run to the bathroom, every couple of minutes. And she was also dealing with some acne and just overall inflammation. And she kept going to her doctor, she kept going to her OB, and all they said was, you must be in perimenopause. You can start hormones, go back on birth control, or just deal with it, essentially. And there was no deeper digging done. So she invested in my VIP coaching program, and we quickly identified through this GI map. I mean, there were several things we identified with the tests that we run, but specifically with the GI map, her digestion was terrible. She had a parasite. She had significant overgrowth of bad bacteria. She had really low levels of good bacteria. Really, really low levels of good bacteria. So overall, her gut was imbalanced. So she had the parasite, but she also had really low levels of good bacteria and some overgrowth. She was also not digesting protein well, and she wasn't digesting fat well. And it was really interesting when I did her lab review, she messaged me and she was like, you know what? Like, ever since I've been little, I've had an aversion to protein. Like, she just has this ick when it comes to meat, specifically like red meat and pork. And she was like, I feel like that's because I just have been maldigesting it. And it's basically kind of been harming me because I couldn't digest it. Maybe that's why I've just had this ick to it. And it was so cool because we just had this light bulb moment together where it was like, yes, like this connects all those dots. So I created her a plan to get rid of the parasite, rebuild all that beneficial bacteria to really build up her gut and strengthen her gut immune system with targeted foods and a targeted probiotic. She also was taking a probiotic before working together, but it was not doing anything for her. So this is where it's important to do the testing to know if the supplements you're taking are actually doing what they need to be doing. Otherwise, you're just wasting money. And then we also worked on optimizing her digestion. So a big thing that this includes is adequate mineral support, adequate bile support, making sure that we're working on stomach acid, being able to build that back up on its own, and helping her body digest the food she was actually consuming. And within a couple months, she lost 10 pounds naturally. She actually started working out less because we identified that was a big stressor for her body. So instead of doing like HIIT workouts, she backed it down to just walking and some strength training. And her digestion was so much better. Her acne was basically non existent. Her periods were better. Her mood was better. Her sleep was better. So, this was another example of like, it wasn't just perimenopause, it was these deeper layers of gut health, mineral health, a lot of other things that we talked about. But for the sake of this example, even the last two things made a huge, I would say those were the biggest impacts with her. Number 3 is metabolism, thyroid, and detox. And this is where functional blood work does come into play, but these are not the functional blood labs that you're probably used to your doctor running. So I'll explain. We need to look at a full thyroid panel, not just TSH. This is the biggest pet peeve. I don't know if this is the biggest one. Maybe it's one of the biggest ones. I think the biggest one for me is when doctors say like your labs look normal, and I look at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, these are horrific. Like these are not normal, because I look at labs with a much more narrow reference range. But a lot of times doctors will just run TSH, and that doesn't give us any data. And I look at a full thyroid panel, which includes TSH, free T4, reverse T3, free T3, TPO antibodies, and TG antibodies. The HTMA also shows on a cellular level how is your thyroid functioning, because specific minerals like iodine, like potassium, for example, calcium, are really important for thyroid function. So we need to look at a full thyroid panel to fully assess your metabolic health. And then iron and copper metabolism. So important. A full iron panel, because if we have iron overload, that's going to cause inflammation. Or if we have iron deficiency anemia or poor iron recycling, those are really, really important things that we need to address to help with PMS, acne, even gut issues, because excess iron or an iron imbalance where we have low serum iron but maybe high ferritin, for example, that can signal that it's feeding something in the gut. So iron can be feeding a parasite, or it can be feeding H. pylori, it can be feeding certain bacteria in the gut, candida. And if we just go to the doctor and they run like a serum iron, for example, and it's low, then they're probably going to say, oh, go on an iron supplement. But if we're not assessing the full picture of, is it actually true iron deficiency? Like, are all things low, or is just one lab low and the other ones are high? That could be actually making things worse. It could be causing more iron deficient or iron recycling issues, iron getting stored in the tissues, causing inflammation. It could be feeding those pathogens in the gut. There could be a whole host of things. So this is why getting a full iron panel to really assess what's going on, in combination with the HTMA as well as the GI map, can be so helpful. And then, as I briefly mentioned, copper. So I see a lot of high copper in my women who are coming off birth control, because copper and estrogen rise together. So when someone's been taking birth control and the combination pill, which is estrogen and progesterone, that can increase estrogen, because one, they're taking that day in and day out. And two, because of birth control's impact on detox systems, it makes it so that your detoxification is sluggish. And or, like we talked about with that beta glucuronidase, your body can't detoxify it in the gut either. So this can lead to high copper, which can lead to acne, overall inflammation, lots of mood symptoms. So depression, anxiety, ADHD symptoms, insomnia, joint pain is a big one. So I had a client who was stopping birth control, had several years of acne, and just lots of anxiety, inflammation, joint pain. And we tested her copper and it was almost 200, and I want to see it at 100. So she was almost double what it should have been. And so we quickly implemented a high free copper protocol for her to safely detoxify that copper and to balance it out. And pretty much immediately within the first month, she started noticing differences in her mood, in her skin, and in her joint pain. She just felt more like a human, she said. And glucose and insulin, we want to look at this. A lot of times doctors will just run a glucose and an A1C, but they're not looking at fasting insulin. And the reference range for fasting insulin is so broad. I think they say anywhere from like 0 to 14, versus I want to see it like 6 to 7 is like a normal, what I would consider an optimal fasting glucose. So this is something I did with a client recently who is considering working with me. She was rightfully, she's been burned a lot of times working with providers. So she really wanted to make for sure I was the right fit and had something different to offer her. So she had just gotten labs done with her doctor. And she was like, I just keep getting told, like, my labs are normal. My labs are normal. Like, I feel like I'm doing all the things. So I was like, well, let's go through your labs together, like what you have. And so she didn't have a lot. Like, again, doctors will run kind of surface level labs, in my opinion. It's not, I always end up running more to get the full picture. And she had a TSH. They considered that normal. I was like, that's high for me. She had a fasting insulin. It was like 14, and that was considered normal for conventional medicine. I was like, that is super high. That's double what I want to see it. That is definitely impacting your skin and your mood and your periods. So she came to me with lots of eczema or psoriasis, just skin issues in general, and then painful, heavy periods and anxiety, and also some like weight gain and just generalized inflammation. It's like that's definitely impacting it. So we ended up working together. She invested in BIP, and once I ran additional blood labs, the GI map, the HTMA, and the iodine, which we'll talk about next, I uncovered so much data, so much data. And that's the most fun thing I love about my job is when I get labs back and I'm like reviewing them, and then I record a lab review protocol or video for clients and then their initial protocol. And I'm like, here's all the stuff I found, all the stuff. And when women have been told everything looks normal, you're healthy, there's nothing we can do, go to this person, try this thing, but they aren't given answers, it's so freeing. And it's so like, just, I don't know the word for it. It's just a weight is lifted off, and they just feel so much better knowing that they can fix this. When they have the data from these labs to fix it, it's amazing. And it feels so good for me to be the person that can give that to them. And not only give them the data, but like tell them this is how we're going to fix it over this period of time. Liver enzymes are another thing that I look at and are really, really important. So I know for me, because my liver enzymes have been the worst that I've seen up until this point, I'm looking at ALT, AST, and alk phos. And again, I'm looking at what's optimal. So my liver enzymes were really, really high for what I like to see it, but conventional medicine just said that they were normal. And so this was a huge role and a huge root cause of my acne when I stopped birth control, because I've been on birth control 10 plus years, which that one depletes minerals, which your liver needs lots of energy and lots of minerals and vitamins to function. It also works negatively on your gut, which therefore impacts detoxification. And it also makes your detox organs like your liver, your gallbladder more sluggish. So it's no wonder my liver enzymes were high. I mean, I consider myself close to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but conventional medicine was like, your labs look normal. So this was something I had to do a lot of targeted work to repair and heal my liver to help with detoxification. So this included, minerals. It included sulfur-rich foods, so like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, sprouts, beets, ginger, all those things, and other supportive detoxification things. So like hot yoga, sweating, castor oil packs, sauna, all of that was so helpful. And now my liver is the healthiest it's ever been, and my skin is the clearest it's ever been. So huge direct link there. The labs that I run are very, very different compared to what doctors will run, even functional doctors or naturopathic doctors. I don't see a lot of people running, I don't see anyone else running copper, a full iron panel usually. So those are two that I see missed a lot and that are so important, especially for women who are stopping birth control or have been off birth control and experiencing symptoms, because all of these things build up to healthy, balanced hormones. If there's any inflammation, which AKA, if you have iron copper dysregulation, high insulin, high glucose, high liver enzymes, et cetera, low liver enzymes even, then that's a sign of inflammation and stress on your body that needs to be addressed. I'm also looking at them from an optimal women's health range, which is much more narrow than conventional doctors, which they're only going to flag when it's a disease state. So very, very important to run the right labs and have the right person looking at those blood labs too. The last one I want to go into, which I'm very excited to talk about, is iodine. This is another one that most of the time I don't see running and or people running and I don't see talked about enough. But iodine is like the queen. Iodine is amazing. I want to like shout out to the rooftops. I mentioned this, I think last week or the week before, but I have been doing so much research into this over the past couple of years after I learned about it. And I gave my mom a book about iodine and why you need it because she just recently recovered from a lump in her breast. And iodine has been shown to help prevent and reduce lumps in the breast and breast cancer, prostate cancer. It's so healing for the body, and we just don't get enough iodine. Iodine is mostly it's the highest in seaweed, seafood, kelp. So think about how often as Americans we're consuming that. And iodine is really important not only for preventing certain cancers, but also for your thyroid. So it's really supportive for your thyroid if anyone's been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, or maybe you fluctuate with like Hashimoto's or hyperactive thyroid. This is a really important mineral, but you have to do it safely. You have to work with a trained provider when implementing iodine. There's a very strategic process and protocol, and you want to titrate it up safely after prepping with companion nutrients and salt loading. It's also really important for PMS and fibrocystic pain and breast pain. So I've even had clients who, if they're having a lot of breast tenderness, specifically during ovulation, will put some iodine topically on the breast tissue. And that can be really helpful, especially as we're working on rebuilding those internal iodine stores. And iodine, another reason that it's low in a lot of people is because of competing halogens. So if you think to the periodic table, there's fluoride, bromide, and chlorine, and iodine. And we are overburdened with fluoride, bromide, and chlorine. So fluoride in toothpaste and at the dentist's office, bromides in a lot of flours and baked goods, chlorine in pools and cleaning products. These are things that push out the iodine and therefore make it lower. So we're not consuming enough iodine to begin with, but we're also consuming excess other halogens that compete and push iodine out of the cell. What we do to identify iodine stores is a urine iodine test from Hakala Labs. And the HMA can, similar to like low stomach acid, it can give us indication. It can give me indication of if iodine is low. So for example, if like potassium and calcium are out of balance, if copper is really, really high or low, that can show it. So there are some things that can show me that, but really the gold standard for testing your iodine levels is the urine iodine loading test, which is a urine test. So essentially you take a iodine tablet, you collect your urine for 24 hours, and then it's sent to the lab to assess, and that's going to show your amount of iodine excretion. So if you are sufficient in iodine, you're going to excrete 90% of that iodine because your body doesn't need it. You have sufficient iodine levels in your body. If you're deficient in iodine, you're going to excrete less. And I would say the average iodine excretion that I see in my practice is anywhere from 45 to 65. So, and I've never had a woman test that's sufficient in iodine ever at this point. I'll let you know if that changes, but I've never had that happen. Everyone has been deficient in iodine. And because of its link to, hormone balance directly and indirectly, as well as acne, painful periods, inflammation, it's really one of those minerals that is so important. And again, there's a very strategic, targeted protocol that I've been intensively trained in, because if you just start dosing iodine or taking an iodine supplement, it could lead to negative reactions like a skin rash, making your acne worse, making your, breast tenderness worse, your periods worse. You have to make for sure you're clearing out those excess halogens with salt loading, and you have to make for sure you're dosing with companion nutrients for at least 4 weeks prior. So vitamin C, magnesium, and selenium. So I repeat, do not go ahead and dose with iodine, or, you can safely incorporate. I'm okay with you incorporating iodine-rich foods. If you want to incorporate more seaweed, more seafood, kelp sprinkles, those are great. But do not supplement with iodine unless you're working with a trained professional and you've done the proper testing and the proper prep work, okay? Because you don't want things to get worse. So bringing it all together, my non-negotiables for healthy, balanced hormones are minerals and stress, which we evaluate through blood labs and the HTMA, gut health, which we analyze through the comprehensive stool test, the GI map, metabolism, thyroid, and detox function, which can be analyzed through functional blood labs, as well as inflammation markers like copper and iron, and then iodine status, which is done through the iodine loading test by Hakala Labs. All of these things, if you fix these things, your hormones are going to naturally rebalance. And these labs provide clarity, confidence, and a very clear roadmap of what exactly imbalances you have that are leading to your hormone symptoms. So instead of just testing what's reacting, we need to understand why is it reacting to begin with. And that's what all of these tests show, and these deeper underlying layers show of hormone balance. So I use this analogy in last week's episode, but think of hormones as an iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg is your hormones. That's what you're going to see. The acne, period issues, whether it's painful or MIA, missing, irregular, PMS, mood swings, anxiety, fatigue, all of those things are hormone symptoms. But underneath it, we have your iodine status, your minerals, your stress, your gut function, your detoxification, your metabolism. Those are the things we need to be targeting to make those symptoms better versus just chipping away at the top of the iceberg, because you're just going to be chipping away forever and it's going to keep rebuilding. We got to attack it at the root. We got to attack it at the source. And that is what's going to lead you to stop guessing, stopping Googling, stop taking random supplements that aren't moving the needle, doing all these restrictive elimination diets, seeing provider after provider, and not getting where you are wanting to go. Okay. So I invite you, if you have, maybe you've already tested your hormones and you feel, stuck essentially, and you are just taking a graveyard of supplements all the time that are expensive and not moving the needle, or you just kind of gave up and you're like, maybe this is just how I am, or maybe this is just perimenopause or menopause, or maybe this is just what life after stopping birth control is like, or maybe there's no way I can stop birth control and not experiencing these symptoms. I implore you that is not true, regardless of what you've been told by other providers. You know your body best, and if you are not feeling good, there is a deeper reason why that goes far beyond just looking at hormones. And that's what these tests and that's what my coaching programs aim to help you identify and to address and to heal from. So if you're looking for individualized testing and personalized support and protocols that are going to help you proactively prep to come off birth control so it's a smooth experience, rebalance your hormones after birth control, or maybe, you've been off birth control for several years and you're just not feeling like yourself, you're really tired, you're thinking maybe I'm going into perimenopause. All of those things are things that I specialize in. And when you get the right lab and the right plan and the right support, everything changes. So it's so, so helpful to know that you're not alone and that there is a support system out there. You just need the right person looking at your labs, running the right labs, and giving you the right plan. So if you're interested in coaching, feel free to reach out. You can also chat with me on Instagram at Nourished by Tay, or apply at the link below, and we could hop on a free call to chat through your symptoms. Obviously, no pressure. It's truly, I want to make for sure it's the right fit for you. We can talk about different coaching options to fit your budget, your goals, and make for sure that we're going to put you in the right program that is going to help you meet those. If you are interested, I also have the free Breakup with Birth Control Masterclass that dives even deeper into my approach, case studies from real clients, going into these labs and their personalized behind-the-scenes peek at their protocols. So that's also a great next step too, if you're curious to learn more. Hopefully this episode was helpful, and I will see you next week. Until next time, stay nourished, friends.